Hi everybody, James here. Allow me to welcome you to this after-game post-mortem analysis critique review from the GM's perspective of Pokemon Mythic Hunt. What this video is going to be is fairly simple. I'm just going to be looking over this campaign, going behind the scenes, seeing how the campaign could have been improved, what was good about it, and just general aspects of how it came together from the perspective of having already played through it. Now to do that, since it's the first of these videos I've done, I'm going to set the stage a little bit so you're more familiar with me and more familiar with what this campaign was when it was being produced. That way you have a better understanding of like where I'm coming from my analytical point of view. So at the time of making this game, I had very little GM experience. Even now, I have very little GM experience. To put this into perspective, I had played one game as a GM where I had actually fully made the whole campaign from start to finish. And that is a campaign that maybe we'll go into detail on at a later date, but for now it's basically going to be the campaign that shall not be named because it did not go very well. Outside of that, I had to run a module in that same system, and then on top of that, I also ran a game with a couple of sessions that was essentially a theater of the mind game where I got a couple of maps, made a world map that tied them together, and put together a bunch of plot hooks that the players could just like go explore and find and do things with, and then a handful of plot hooks that were character specific that eventually characters stumble over. That was a fun campaign, but didn't last very long, only lasted 2.5 sessions essentially, if even that. And then besides that, I also ran kind of a game that like wasn't even like really a real game. It was just kind of, this is kind of very spontaneity, like, oh, let's just play a game like right now. And so we just like threw some characters together and like things started to happen, and it was got out of hand very fast in a very chaotic, expressive type of way. And that so I don't think sharpened my skills necessarily a ton, but again, everything's a learning experience. I did pull things away from that. So in total, this was the 6th session and 7th session I had run as a GM. Now, with that stated, I had been at this point writing for well over a decade, and I had been interested in game design for also almost a decade. With a brief period of time, I even thought about going into game design as my career choice. So I'm very familiar with the things it takes to put together a game, right? With that said, that kind of naturally transitions me into the first topic, which is the actual preparation for this game, which is a lot more in-depth than people probably even begin to realize. But before I say that, I do have to premise this with the fact that this game was played over a year ago at this point, so I have a very good memory, and I do probably remember at least 90% of the details of everything that happened in revolving this game. The problem is that other 10% is going to be relatively foggy, and I might be like kind of jogging my memory as I go, so forgive me if there's a few things that I don't remember off the top of my head right away. Bear with me because again, this was played a very long time ago. So the beginning, I obviously really like Pokemon. I've written multiple long-running stories in the Pokemon verse at this point, and the effects of those stories can heavily be seen in the system here, and also just generally in the world building, especially like the Aura system, which is essentially, again, the Aura system is in the base Pokemon, and so is other kind of similar systems, but they don't really actually have any rules or regulations or anything that like ties them together or makes them work in a coherent way at all. So when we talk about the Aura system, I'm using a system that I had already fleshed out for my actual stories I had already written. So I'm just lifting that system and I'm transferring over to the game world here. Which again, you might be wondering, what do you mean by transferring things? So this game, actually, I made from scratch, from the ground up. I had looked at other Pokemon systems that were out there. I didn't like any of them. They all seemed bad. I'm not going to guarantee say they were bad per se, but they definitely minimally were not systems that I would be interested in running at all. They were very heavy number crunching systems that did not seem fun to play or fun to run at all. So I started making my own system from scratch, and that's where we kind of see growing pains in these first couple sessions and see switches from one session to the next. And having like gone over like the actual like notes and things I had put into the system, there's a lot. There actually is like a lot to the system. I know I spent like 8 hours straight just working on the system before like anything else started being put together, which I kind of had to do if I wanted to actually run the game. It needed a system to be run off of. There's a lot to the classes that people have not seen and probably will not see for a while. There's entire classes that were not picked for any of the characters in this. A ton of subclasses also not picked, which is not surprising. There are a bunch of subclasses, so obviously not everyone's going to pick all of them. It wasn't even humanly possible, and especially not if like there was overlap between some of the subclasses that people had chosen. So a lot into the system, and I do want to continue to develop that system into the point where it actually is fully usable, and also to the point where I could like release it to the public and have it be like fully understandable and fully playable and in like a pretty state. Like most game systems, probably any GM already knows this, they look nice when you look at them. You know, there's like artwork and there's other things going along with them that makes them look nice. I'd at the very least like some things in there even have to use like official artwork, like these two sprites here, or just like maybe get some fan artists to collaborate or do something, or be chill with me using the artwork for it. Just do something to spice it up a little bit to make it look a little bit nicer. Right now it's kind of very bland to look at, and it's not, the formatting could use some tweaking even from what's there, which is essentially the classes and the notes on how the actual system works, and those are in separate documents. And so a lot goes into actually making the system. It's essentially like making a actual nonfiction novel, essentially. And again, that is a bit of time, even just outside of making the system itself, which will take dozens and dozens of hours to get it fine-tuned to the point where it actually is fully playable without any like flaws in it. Beyond that, it will still take like another probably 30 hours to actually even just get it formatted correctly and get it look like an actual like nice readable document that people can use. Again, haven't touched that very much. This kind of was a back burner project. Again, we kind of like a year ago essentially played, and that's a handful of different reasons, but it's fine. We probably will start working on this again. It's up in the air exactly what's going to be happening right now with this game and this world and different things, but I will be doing more of this, I can guarantee it, because this system I'm heavily interested in. I really love Pokemon to death. Definitely my favorite franchise. So I'm definitely going to develop this further, at least so we can have like a good Pokemon system that isn't, my god, so many stats, so many things, and like done in a very uncreative, very like this is just Dungeons and Dragons but reskinned sort of way that doesn't really fit the flavor of Pokemon, in my opinion. And of course, like again, having things deeper than just like one source material is also really helpful, because most of them seem like they're primarily based off of the games. And the games aren't necessarily the most interesting when it comes to doing like role play situations and stuff. The manga, the anime, like there's tons of other mediums that are way more rife for potential for adapting things. And again, like my own stories, way more rife for adapting things into an actual game system that is more coherent, more playable, has more nuance to it than just like taking things and lifting them directly from just how the game plays. I'm not going to go too much detail into the system. I might make a separate video on that if people are interested, but for now, I'm going to primarily focus on the campaign as a way to just, you know, show things how they went. Good, yes, good. Now, I'm not 100% sure where to begin. Maybe start with the initial idea. Initial idea was just like, let's have a rare Pokemon be on the loose and have people try to hunt it down. Very simple, right? Very simple, one-shot, set things up type of scenario. Beyond that, I also had to get down like what gives you that feel of Pokemon, right? Being able to catch wild Pokemon, being able to have things kind of go wrong in like a controlled manner, having a world, like getting the finite details of the world down. It's very important. Having things like understanding that the world probably works on a UBI system, and understanding that probably the economics of the world function in a fairly different manner than they do here, or at least they do here in like 99% of countries. There are a handful of countries where the economic systems probably stray more towards Pokemon's world than ours. But that, again, like it's understanding some of those fundamental systems so you can actually work them into how the actual trading and things go in this world, to have an actual grasp on how to deal with those things. And even though that didn't come up in the game very much, right, it's still necessary to do those things in order to have an actual grasp on being able to do them in case it comes up, right? I'm gonna jump to character creation. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 characters, and they're interesting, right? They kind of are all over the board. We did not have a very good artistic cohesion. That's fine. That's fair. We kind of just like grabbed things, I don't know, 15 minutes before we started playing as the icon. So that was cool. I really liked having to crop things out real fast. It's fine. It's not fine. Especially when I had to recolor, because people can probably tell Blake's icon did not have color when I found it, or whoever found it. So I had to actually color in the hair and color in the eyes, and I just like left the rest blank because, you know, reasons. I'm like, again, like recoloring Marcus here, not a big deal. Changing like a few of his colors around to like match the character better was not a big deal. But coloring Blake took a little bit longer to do because of going from black and white to color it takes a little bit longer. Character creation went smoothly enough. Again, I kind of learned here that I need to like prod my PCs a little bit more with like actually getting them to like get the details of the character down, because some of them came in with like, this is the character, this is their age, hello. And like that's not like a lot to work from either GM side or the PC side, so that kind of like makes for a weaker campaign overall. So again, a learning thing there to just give them just like a handful of basic questions to fill out to like get a better grasp on who their character is before coming in, and also it gives me more to work with setting up plot hooks to go along. And even with that said, again, there's a plot hook here that didn't come up, and this is one of the few things that I had prepared that didn't actually come up in the game, and that's the actual, this was going to be a daycare area here, and I figured this character actually could have worked as a romantic interest to Robert, and I think maybe that happened in the second. No, I remember what happened. It was in the first session. I think Robert hit on the first female character that came along, and I was like, okay, I kind of understand where this character is going now. So I figured this could have been a romantic interest, especially since she would have lived in the same town as him. That didn't go over. No one was like, where's the daycare? And that's perfectly fair. I kind of feel like maybe people would explore around more, but they didn't. That again is perfectly fair. I'm fine with that happening. It's just again good to have more plot hooks going around. I don't think we use this area or this area very much, and that's fair. We use this a little bit. Again, this actually came up in the plot that there were fields here growing most likely berries and probably a couple other small things. But like this came up actually in the plot, and I'm glad I remembered this was a thing because it actually kept a PC into the game for longer and able to like do things. So again, like memorizing places of the map is helpful. I don't really have to focus on that because again, kind of ironclad memory. But again, helpful, good thing to have. Going back actually to like the prep work of this. Obviously, I had to like put a bunch of little plot hooks all over the place, and most of them were not explored. Like the Beedrill area explored well, right? Like I knew Beedrills would be here, Kakunas, these things would be here. They explored that fairly well. There's not like an extra quest with a Beedrill here or anything. There could have been, but like that didn't come up or anything. The Woodsman here, way more to happen with. I was not expecting the Woodsman to say, I don't really feel like talking to you. And everyone be like, okay, that seems reasonable. Bye, Woodsman. You're our only lead, but see you later. Did not quite expect that, right? So like that plot thread was gone. The museum could have had more going on, right? Not a ton more. Again, like just like a little bit details. They could have like explored some plot of the world or something here, but overall, like they pretty much like if they get in and get out, that's fine. Like all these things are fine. I'm not too worried about any individual aspect going in a specific way. It's more so about having options available and being able to push those options further if needed. So like again, if they came in here and they started asking questions or started looking at what's in the museum, I could give them answers, right? And that would be a way to develop things in a certain direction and even get some character development and character growth if it goes in that direction. But again, it's about having the possibility to get nuance out of any given situation. And again, that kind of happens in RP, right? They spent a lot of time in the Pokemon Center just trying to figure out what this mythic Pokemon was. And it's kind of interesting because again, I think Owl probably had the most knowledge on Pokemon out of the people talking, and I think his knowledge taps out fairly quickly. It pretty much just me and Oscar have like actual like deep knowledge in Pokemon. Oscar, I think, has a ton more. He obviously has more of the games memorized than I do, but I have more of like the overall Pokemon world memorized than he does, and that's perfect. That works really well. The fact he actually has like moves memorized, like what? I don't even think I've ever read a move description. What do you mean I don't just over level my starter and win? What are you even talking about? So those worked out well. I do think the amount of plot hooks were good. The fact they weren't all explored, the fact that lots of plot hooks could have been way more explored is like, okay, I put a good number of plot hooks in, and again, some of them can be used in later places. Building upon the foundation you set up at the beginning and just taking things over and be like, okay, this didn't come up here, so it might come up later, and just having that in your back pocket, a strong thing to have. I like it. I think that was a good part of this game. A less good part of the game is the fact the system wasn't fully optimized, right? Defense needs to be worked more, and again, this is going to be a big one. This is going to be a big point I'm going to get into, which is the concept of a turn order and a concept of like gamification versus what's satisfying to play. The most satisfying thing to play is not having a turn order and just having people play based off of time passage. So essentially, if, let's say, Marcus and Blake were both doing something, they both had a Pokemon out, they both could go whenever they want. If Blake wants to go first because he just goes first, he just doesn't think about things, he goes, then Blake could go in with his right hand and hit something, and Marcus could then say, okay, he's doing this, I'll follow him up, or I'll cover him, or I'll do this, or I'll react to what happens. And everyone would get a reaction time to do something, but then, after that, like, clock ticks over in time, that's when kind of everything resets and people can redecide. Then Marcus could take the lead and start doing something, and Blake could do the follow-up, because it allows for a free-form system. And I see other people able to do this and do this very well, and this is what my end goal is to be able to do this, but there's a couple things holding me back from it. One is having the system be fluent enough to actually do it, to actually have that be a possibility. But two, that takes a higher level of GMing capability than I necessarily have. Big problem is like, I don't know how to like wrangle my players good enough. That is a big problem. Like being able to field questions and like say, okay, this is not time for questions. This is time for things to happen. And like having understandings of like, some of this comes with experience. Some of this comes with like GM and players having time together. Like, eventually, I'd imagine people would know, like, if you're off screen, you cannot do actions. Or people will eventually know, if I'm not involved with what's going on, or there's something's going on, or the GM is currently commentating and, like, explaining something, not a good time to ask a question. I need to actually probably get that fairly clear. Like, if I am currently describing how something's happening, I don't need you to ask me a question about your character sheet, dog. Like, that's not the best time. I just need to be able to like circumvent those situations going forward, and being able to do that makes that type of system run smoother. But again, I don't think even with getting some of these down, I still don't think that works. I'm probably going to go over to a action point based system where people have a action. I'm still deliberating over like having the trainer have an action and having the Pokemon have an action, or having the trainer have two actions, because like they kind of operate differently. Again, I think the Pokemon should have its own action, but again, part of the system is that certain trainers have their Pokemon better trained than other trainers. There's a certain class that has their Pokemon, like part of the advantage of the class is the Pokemon's independent actions away from the trainer are just like smarter, and they can train them, and they say, in this situation, do this, and like they have better control over the Pokemon, even just not directly controlling them. And of course, part of the Aura class is being able to control Pokemon while actually giving orders. And so there's part of class identity is tied into Pokemon acting on their own. And part of like, again, the feel of Pokemon is you need to be a competent, well-spoken trainer in order to actually control your Pokemon, tell them what to do, and win in a fight. It's still not just about whatever Pokemon hits hardest. That's why wild Pokemon will always be inferior to caught Pokemon. Again, there's more to it than that. Like, again, the Aura system makes wild Pokemon always more inferior, and there's a lot can go into that, but that's a key factor, is a well-trained Pokemon is always going to be superior to the same Pokemon, but is wild, is not trained, it does not have that refinement that a trainer can give. But, again, these are like end results compared to like what actually happens. What actually happens is people are confused by the system, like, can I go now? And just the answer is yes, but like, it's, do you want to go now? I think a very good thing to do is potentially have it so people at the start of a round say, okay, choose what order you guys want to go in at the start, and then after that first round ends, go into a more freeform system. I think that can work, or even just have it, what I think I'm going to do for my next campaign I run is I'm going to have players choose who goes first and who goes last at the beginning. And that might make it more clear, like, if there's 4 players and you know who's first, you know who's last, the middle 2 can kind of like instantly figure that one out, I feel. It would also work for a party like this because, again, someone like Blake would just rush in immediately, most likely, and someone like Marcus would most likely hang back to the end, right? There's situations where that could be different, but generally, this character here, that's more so their role in the narrative, is holding back and fixing a problem if it comes up. And that kind of leads me into Marcus's character here. And I can talk more about this topic of like full player control during a conflict versus no player control during conflict versus like other things versus turn order versus like rolling for initiative. All these things are interesting. And again, it's that balance of being able to run a game and being able to run a game really well. Game initiative is not as fun as just having raw do whatever you want to do, because that's just how it would work in real life. But it's easier to work with initiative. It takes less effort, it takes less work, it takes less experience to do initiative-based games. Again, a turn-based RPG, way easier to put together than a action RPG, right? Way, way, way harder to do Dark Souls than it is to do Final Fantasy. But Dark Souls is like the greatest game ever made. Final Fantasy is fun. It's fine. Like, their JRPGs are fantastic, but like, it's not the greatest game ever made. And I'm aiming for the greatest game ever made here. I'm not like, again, like, so it depends on the game. It depends on the system. It depends on lots of different things. But it even depends on the players, right? Big conversations had on gamification versus narratification versus RP versus story versus plot versus big conversations beyond the scope of whatever this video has. I'm going to talk about Marcus now. Now, Marcus is a thing I have mixed feelings on, right? Beyond just the character himself, I have a lot more for the character than we actually got to show off in this campaign. That's fine, Because again, I slotted him in here from the GM's perspective. I slotted him in here as essentially a safety net, as a just in case someone does something that could kill themselves. I could have a non-player character. I could have an NPC there that could potentially keep them from dying. The point of the character. I like some of the relationships he managed to build. I like the dynamic he had with Blake a little bit. Again, that could be better handled. I feel like that could have been established more, built up more. Again, Marcus was introduced when Blake wasn't even there, so there's like stuff going on there. But again, like that wasn't planned. That just came out through generally like the RP, right? I just figured like Marcus would be interested in someone with aura, and like Blake is dumb AF, so it was like it just kind of happened. It just kind of happened to go that way. Now, I'm conflicted on the idea of a safety net. I'm conflicted on that idea in general. I'm conflicted on the idea of having a PC, a non-PC in the party. Primarily because of the fact I feel like having revolving characters is more dynamic and more interesting. And so having Marcus here for this campaign can work well, but I don't know about having Marcus here for another campaign, except for like further in the future where he's been gone long enough that you might miss him, or when he shows up again, it's like, oh, it's Marcus, hey. And so having that I think is better. Again, there's a lot more with his character we didn't get into. People kind of called him a martial artist, and that's my fault for calling him a martial artist when I first introduced him. He, like, technically is a martial artist. Again, any aura user I would consider a martial artist, technically speaking. But that, like, it's the same way, like, any Pokemon trainer is technically a battler, but, like, not every Pokemon trainer is a battler, right? Like, this one is a catcher. This one is a battler / catcher. Well, it's kind of a catcher for a lot of this, but like at the end seems to be transitioning into a battler. So the other characters have like different roles. Again, like Nyland, Owl's character, much more of a murder hobo, really. Like much more murder. We'll get into that one. Different people, like technically they are all battlers, but like you wouldn't necessarily call them a battler, right? And the same thing with Marcus. Like technically he is a martial artist. He had to learn martial arts and learn how to use aura, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's really a martial artist. And again, there's a lot more character to Marcus that we didn't really get into. Is a lot more fun, and hopefully the next time he shows up we can actually like explore that fully. Just focusing on setting up the system and the campaign and the plot kind of took precedence over setting up and establishing Marcus and his character traits and his personality and like his goal. Though there is a little bit of foreshadowing, a little bit of stuff set up there. So hopefully when he does come back, we kind of just transition smoothly into what his actual story is. And it's what I like. I like it. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be nice. Oshawott. Oshawott's cool. Look at this little dude. I just saw this dude. I was like, yeah. I don't even remember. What was it? I think I saw a comic with an Oshawott that had funny looking eyes. So I just grabbed an Oshawott and I photoshopped funny looking eyes on him. I was like, yeah, let's go. Funny looking eye, Oshawott. Let's go. And he's like, this Oshawott clearly has seen some things and is going to be dangerous. I liked him. I liked the farmer as well. I think that was a nice little encounter. Nice look at it. Yes. I don't have any comments on that. I do want to comment on the aura here. This is a nice effect. I like it. It takes up slots though. Again, the main drawback of Pokemon is it takes up slots on Roll20. So like almost all my Roll20 slots are just for Pokemon and for like the Pokemon that are canonically a part of the Station League, which is this like regions area. Let's talk about these other characters. Blake is good. I like him. I think he's fine. I think he's perfectly good, and I think he is probably RP'd maybe near the best of the characters here. He's not my favorite, but like we'll get into what my favorite is. Very good. I liked him throughout the entirety of the campaign. Very humorous things happen with him. I'm sad I don't have Beedrill with a hole in him. I made an actual Beedrill design with a hole, so I might get him. I'll get that Beedrill in for when we continue from here. If we continue from here, other words that happen. Again, like maybe I could have evolved. Maybe I could have kept Lucario not evolved, but like I knew Lucario was. We had already decided beforehand that Lucario would evolve from the opposite of friendship. He would evolve from hate rather than friendship, and this was a very good opportunity to evolve him with hate, especially with like this like character turn at the end of the series where like the boy is going in a much more villainous direction and a much more angry direction than he was before. Again, I kind of feel like it will be more tame than necessarily played up at the start. I feel like probably the character will be like have an edge to him now, right? Maybe more so like probably like almost in line with like Kaneki Ken from Tokyo Ghoul, where like after his first traumatic experience, he comes back with a full edge and he's fully like shut off from the world. But after like a little while, he kind of softens back up again. He kind of like has his more original personality shine through a bit more, but he still has like that edge underneath that's ready to come out at a moment's notice. I feel like that's probably the direction this character is going to go in, if I had to assume. I really like Kung Fu Panda Rhydon. I thought that was neat. He just rolled good on a movement roll, so I was like, okay, he's Kung Fu Panda now. Cool. Calm Beedrill, good, good. I love Calm Beedrill, very good. I like him. This is a Nidoran. I don't know. Throw him away. He's in the trash. He belongs in the trash. I don't have tokens for Nyland or Robert, but I'll discuss their characters. Robert is a character. He is there. He does things. He is clearly not very smart, but on the scale of this party, he is somehow not the dumbest, which is impressive. I mean, we do have this child here who stood on a road for 9 years, so yeah, okay, we have Robert. Yeah, Robert is a guy. My dude, he is not smooth with ladies. I kind of like, again, that's a thing to talk about with a player, but like I'm at that point of like, maybe I should like give him a permanent reduction when talking to the opposite gender, because my dude stepped into the plate and he hit himself in the face with the bat over and over again. It wasn't just once. It wasn't just like, I'm gonna swing the bat, bang, on my face, and I'll do it again. How'd this happen a second time? It was not pretty. It was not a pretty situation. Not a pretty situation. Again, in retrospect, I should have expected it. I should have expected when I introduce a female character, someone might instantaneously be like, I'm going to hit on that character. I should have expected it. It should have been the thing I saw. I did not foresee it, though. I did not see it coming. I did not think it was going to happen. And especially it was like not prepared for it at all. Because like, obviously, introducing a canon character like Crystal into the story serves as a purpose for like later narrative setup, right? It's kind of, it works as a narrative establishing point, an anchoring point for people of the series to be more familiarized with, but also shows that, oh, there is kind of more of an overarching plot line going on. Same thing with this Mr. Hitman over here. It sets up an overarching plot line, sets up some plot hooks that can be explored later, and like, it sows the seeds that, oh, there is more going on here than is being showed. Because you don't, foreshadowing can work in multiple different methods. You can like have this character show up and like fight the party, which originally was his intention. I was going to have him fight the party, but it was like we were running low on time, and also just like didn't really like pan out that way, right? It just like it didn't feel like he should fight the party at that point, and they kind of talked their way through this encounter well enough that didn't really make sense for him to fight the party at this point. But again, like setting up and it's like, oh, a threat, oh, a team. It's not important to establish a team, right? It's not important to have the audience know there is a team, because like as soon as a team shows up and starts doing bad, you're like, oh yeah, the Pokemon team. Oh, obviously this region will have a Pokemon team. It's instantaneous. You understand it when you see it. But the purpose is to show that, oh, there is a team that is specifically doing something. I understand that. That's understanding that aspect of the narrative, which allows people to think beyond the scope of the campaign. And when you start thinking beyond the scope of the campaign, you start getting more invested in where the story might be going, and you understand, oh, this story is going somewhere. Okay, that means I can lower that guard, and I can get more invested, I can get more interested and see where it's going to develop from here. Again, that's more of a writing thing than a campaign thing, but these things like all share the same DNA with each other, right? They're all very, very similar in concept. The things you do in a story, you're going to do here as well. But like, again, the main difference is you introduce a female character in a story and they're just there. You don't have to worry about a character hitting on them unless you have like a Sanji-esque character. But like, apparently we have a Sanji-esque character here and he strikes out just as hard. So let's go, lads. Let's go, lads. If he rolled well, I don't know what would have happened, because this character, I think canonically has like a love interest, at least in this universe, variable version. So I don't even know if he could have rolled good enough to actually do it, but like he had hope. It's just that hope was dashed immediately. Bad rolls over and over and over and over again. Owl's character in Island. Okay, a murder hobo, definitely. Owl likes to play the murder hobo-esque characters. Rather than murder hobo, maybe it's more fair to say the chaotic, more interested in not even the mechanics, but rather just what is happening, the intrigue, right? He's more interested in interesting things happening than necessarily the mechanics or the story or the RP of the game. He's interested in what's an interesting thing that can be happening, even at detriment of anything else, like, drinking some poison that he knows is poison, or, abusing his Pokemon because it's kind of funny and cool. And it's like, it is funny and cool, and it does lead to interesting results. Again, that's like, Owl's the type of player that you have to like plan around and like understand what they do. And at this point, I did not understand. I did not understand anything about him. Like, I had played a handful of campaigns with him, and like, I definitely had the picture forming of how he plays. But like, I knew he was the type like to do something that would get his character killed. I knew that already. I knew a bunch of things. I knew he was the type to probably like do some like immediate damage instantly for no reason. Didn't quite know like the extremes of like, yeah, I'm just just willing to die for no reason because it might be a funny meme. Like, I was like, oh yeah, for like a big climatic thing or for like a story point thing, he might kill himself. But like, just like, yeah, I'm gonna just drink this poison, see what happens. It's like, oh, I see. Okay, I was not, okay, yeah, sure, okay. You know, like, I had not GM'd for only 2 of these players I had not GM'd for. So like, getting used to them is definitely a thing. But beyond that, like, I wasn't really focused on like, oh yeah, I've GM'd for these other players. I'm ready for what they're going to bring to the table. And then I was not ready for what they were bringing to the table necessarily. And that is on me. That is on me. It's understanding your players is probably one of the main pillars. That's probably like, of the things that are existence, that's probably one of the main 3 pillars of like good mechanics, good story, understanding your players and working with your players. Is like, that's the 3rd one, right? So that needs to be stronger, I think. I don't know. I don't even know how I can do that, right? Like, how can you come to an understanding with a player you've never played with before? There probably is a way. I just don't know how to do it because, again, I don't have the experience. Like that. Of the things I am very good at, there's a lot of things I'm very, very, very bad at, right? And each of these is a learning experience to get better at some of these things and understanding, like, sometimes RP goes on for a very, very long time. And, like, there has to be a way for me to be able to cut it down because, like, sometimes the RP isn't going anywhere. And sometimes nudges in the right direction are probably helpful to have. Let's talk about Derek. Derek came away as my favorite of the party. I just generally liked Derek's demeanor. I generally liked how the character was played. And I just kind of liked the more heroic aspects of the character. That I felt he fit this world very well. I felt like the character was more fully realized than the other characters. And I feel like he came away in pretty much the best light and with the best connections with the rest of the party. Even though he also, like Marcus, probably came away with like some of the fewest actual like genuine connections, but like even within that he served like a solid purpose. I would kind of like to see this character like evolve more and do more. I already do have a campaign planned for what that would be involved with this character getting more time and development, and like I would be interested to see how this character develops. This is the one that I'm most interested in right now because I don't know, I like how he's played. I like the character overall, and I think he came away looking very well in this campaign and in both session 1 and session, not so much, actually no, even just like chasing down this dude, I was not expecting that, and that unexpectability in like a fun way, you know, like, oh, I see, okay, I don't even know how this is going to go, something like that. I feel adds a lot to a potential story to have like, oh, there is an actual, not wild card, but like just players doing interesting things that aren't expected, that evolve the story and advance the story in dynamic new ways that I didn't account for. I did not think someone would chase after the man who like was threatening them. Like I can see why they might have done that, but again, they reached him and they're like, what do we do now? They didn't have an answer. I don't know. That's a very charming thing, right? Like, oh, he rushed into danger without a plan, got there and was like, oh, I don't have a plan. Let me kind of just wing my way through this. I liked it. I liked this character. I liked the things that went down with him. I thought I was good. That was a good boy. That was a nice thing that happened here. I'm gonna go over to here. Now, this area here is okay. This is a thing. This is a thing. Again, we did not plan to camp here. The session ran a little bit longer than expected. Not even too much longer than expected, but like we had to cut it short because of time thing reasons. Was not expecting a camping thing here. Was not expecting it to be broken up like that. And I was also expecting maybe like spending a little bit more time out here exploring things around, but it's fine that they didn't. They explored both the caves, which is interesting. Well, they kind of explored both the caves. Again, this cave here, not a ton actually to go on in this cave necessarily, but I kind of felt like this might have been where a fight with the grunt could have happened. And it could have happened. Again, if Blake here had went this way instead of this way, he would have ended up fighting the man. He would have ran across the man, and they would have probably had a Pokemon battle or something, and Blake probably would have lost, I'd imagine. Yes, he most definitely would have lost. Again, I designed an actual mechanic for that man that is an interesting mechanic that you would have to like think around, and I don't think Blake would even been capable of doing that. I'm not even sure Oscar could have been capable of doing that. Let's throw some shade. Let's throw some shade, lads. But he went this way instead. So that fight was avoided, and instead Oscar was in sand. And again, that's like, how do we even go? How do we even begin talking about this? I like it when the GM has like control over characters to an extent, where there's a solid enough relationship to the GM and player. The GM can like make a decision for the character in like a humorous or an interesting way that like the player rolls with. Like the idea of improv, it's not no, it's yes and, right? And I like it when the GM has more dynamic control over what the PCs are doing, because of the fact that just like leads to more creative, interesting things to be able to happen. I don't want to have them like, oh, you don't do that, instead you do this. So you never say no, you just say yes and. Like, oh yeah, you totally do go in this area here, and then like you get absorbed in the scene. Again, that seemed kind of jarring for the players, and maybe like those too jarring of, I mean, that probably took like a more subtle lead in, right? It probably took more like, oh, and you say this, or oh, you do this action and you also do this action on smaller things, like. And I think I did have this happen with smaller things. I think, this is, no, it's not part, this was the first session, wasn't it? Okay. I'm fairly certain I had it with, like, when he showed up at the Pokemon Center, I think I controlled his character to do a couple of actions, like put the ticket in his mouth and, like, do certain things with some of the Pokemon. And I definitely did do that, so I guess it's just like the jump, right? It's unexpected to have the GM take control over your character for a second. But I do believe that when you can do that successfully, that leads to more interesting things being able to happen. And it's not about control. It's about making something interesting happen. Making the character do a funny ha-ha is cool. And so, like, having people, not even just the GM, I like it when PCs can do that. But again, that's going to take a very long time to be able to build up to, and it'll take a party that know each other well and are comfortable with each other and are comfortable with the fact, like, oh, this person might say, oh, my character does this, and like that can be canonical and that can be interesting. It's like, oh, that is an interesting thing my character do here, and that's totally what they would do. Yeah, my character does that. And like having that sort of ability to like play off of each other and work with each other in order to advance the individual character's RP and the individual character's like own narratives and experiences, even in just like a surface level way of like here making the scene just like ever so slightly more dynamic or ever so slightly more interesting. I feel that's like an important thing. And I feel like it's also important to have like PCs that feel like they can communicate with each other and talk with each other and say like, oh, this is a big decision for my character. I'm not sure what I should do here. And then people actually discussing it and saying, oh, your character, I feel like they do this, or I feel like they do that. And like having that open discussion, I feel is an important thing. And I feel like that's probably up to the GM to be able to foster that, but it's also up to the PCs to be able to like actually know what's going on and be comfortable doing that and be comfortable with each other. And there's like a bunch of things. There's a bunch of psychology things, but it's whatever, fam. I'm sure I'll figure that out as time goes on. Here's a room. I thought it was very funny that people thought these puddles were Pokemon. That was big funny boy. This is a light. This is a light. And like, I didn't even think about that. I didn't think about the fact this is a light. And so everyone's like, we're going outside. Yes, outside. Here, some stuff happens. People go this way. Here, I'm going to make a comment, which is Robert had done an RP thing that I did not catch at first. He said, what's that noise? In reference to the golem rolling out over. And me as Marcus was like, what noise? And like, I'm fine with like Robert having better hearing or Marcus just like not having picked up on that specific noise. But that could have been worse if I didn't pick up on it as quickly as it did. I think it just took like 2.5 seconds for me to pick up on it, which is a while. Like, I could have said something wrong in that time, and I was just, what are you talking? What noise? Like, that works fine, right? But again, like, being able to pick up on like subtle RP is going to be a thing, especially with like people that you have potential drawbacks. I don't want to say something like people not being able to speak solid English or people not being able to like necessarily communicate themselves very well is a drawback. It is a drawback, but it's not something I shouldn't be able to account for, right? I should be able to like acknowledge like, oh, this person's like vocal reflection is not as like wide as mine. Like, I'm probably the only person that has actual vocal training out of these people. So like, I understand that like, yeah, my vocal range and like my performances are going to be vastly different than their own. So it's just about more picking up on those differences, which I can do. It's just, I just have to like keep it more in mind that like, oh yes, there's going to be, when they're RPing, they're going to do much, much more subtle things than I'm necessarily used to in performances like this. So that's just a note. Gotta just keep that more in the forefront of the mind. This golem thing, I'm 100% sure it was just a random encounter. He just rolled wrong. I was like, what would happen here? A rock falls. And the rock will be a golem. Cool. And that just became an encounter in of itself. Okay, this is kind of the start area of people not understanding like the benefits of having a Roll20 system like this. So when having a system like this, one of the good parts is that you have control over your icon. So like when you're not taking actions, you can just like move your icon, or even when you are taking actions, when you're saying, I want to run up here, you just move your icon up here. You don't necessarily need to let me do it. And you certainly, like if you're not involved with what's going on, you can just like walk this way, right? And that's something that maybe I should have communicated with the players before we started, or maybe like there should have been a way for us to like figure that out as we went along. But like some like again, like here it's like all the icons, like the icons are in a row. So like as a boulder is crashing down this narrow passageway, when these people like know it could be coming and know this is an option. From my perspective, it's like, okay, if you don't want to be there, you step out of the way. Like that's an obvious decision. But like no one did that because they weren't even thinking about doing that. And so again, that's more on me, I feel, of like, I need to be able to get them to understand that you can move your icon, right? That's just like, just move your icon if you want to be somewhere else. And it's important. I feel like that was gotten kind of up here because Blake started moving up down this path. But again, like Marcus jumped off of his Rhyhorn, right? And so like Oscar, the player, is like, oh, I'm not going to go up here. I take that back. GM, undo. And he, like, there's sure like some passion in his voice when he's doing that. But like, again, like, you don't need to say undo. Like, if you don't have all the information, then obviously it's like something else is going to happen. Or again, like with something like the boulder coming down here, you can just say, oh, actually, I wasn't going to be standing there. As long as like, again, you need to be honest. I mean, there's never should be a situation where you're not honest with the GM, except for like, again, a hyper-specific situation of like, let's lie to the GM about something because that's part of the game or whatever. Outside of that hyper-specific thing, you want to be as honest as possible because of the fact that just makes the game better, right? It's not about like, it's not about winning. It's about having the most fun in the game possible. And like being honest is how you can get those results, right? So this saying, oh, actually, I would have stepped out of the way, or saying like, or just moving your icon out of the way. Even if you just like took his icon, just like moved it down here, I would have gotten the point. I would have gotten the hint, like, oh, okay, he wasn't standing there. Again, like I ask when the boulder starts rolling, is who would have gotten out of the way? And he's the only one who said he would have gotten out of the way, and that's fair enough, right? And same thing up here. And I think this is like a communication thing. Here, he understood I can move my icon and that will like make a change in the game world. But he didn't understand that like just because your icon moves doesn't necessarily mean things are going to function the way you want them to function, especially if you have another player or another NPC making decisions alongside you and in tandem to you, and those aren't lining up with necessarily what's going on in your head. But that's fine, because if it doesn't happen, then this action doesn't happen, right? If you say, oh, I wouldn't have gone up if he jumps off, then it just doesn't happen. It's not like, take it back. It didn't happen in the first place, right? You just say that and you're like, okay, then you're still here. That's all that happens. Or you say, oh, I wouldn't have gone up. Instead, I would have like gone this way to try to catch up with everyone else. You can say something like that, and that works perfectly fine, because it's, again, understanding that like time is relative. Time doesn't like matter. Like if anything could happen, but it also could not happen, right? If I roll a dice, I roll a 19, and I say, okay, this is definitely happening, and I start narrating something, and someone says, hey, can I roll a counter dice with like this stat? And I say, I guess so, but you have to roll, and they roll a nat 20, and I was like, okay, I guess that doesn't happen. Like that just is like how it works. You gotta be freeform like that, and like I have to have a way to like express that to the players in a more clear, concise manner. Let's move on to the fight, because we've been going on for that for a little fight. With this boy up here, I could have probably worked out more mechanics with this boy. The water I felt like an interesting gimmick, but I don't think it came into play at all, like in the slightest. Definitely like it came into play at the start of like, don't touch the water at the beginning or you'll be electrocuted, but that kind of like lost interest fast when he started being like slammed and such. Definitely interesting play of like, obviously I wasn't going to calculate them having a Pokemon that knows self-destruct because they just caught it. So like when I said like, oh, the campaign hinges on that, like it did. Like I'm obviously not going to be like, oh, he's a self-destruct proof, which I probably would have put in. Like I would give him an ability that like is able to keep him from dying instantly, at least to a self-destruct, if I knew they had that on the team, but they didn't until, you know, they had caught it. So that like wasn't going to be a thing. So like the campaign kind of hinged on that, but they didn't, what was it? They didn't roll high enough, or I think I outrolled them. I rolled a guard, and the guard managed to like take the damage down enough that like he was hurt pretty badly, but he wasn't like hurt bad enough that like he was just going to be knocked out or even in an opportunity to like throw a Pokeball at him at range. No, like mechanics of the fight could have been deeper. Again, like I kind of spent a lot of the mechanics working on this man and like how these two Pokemon will work. Could have spent more time on this guy maybe, especially since he was like the titular Pokemon in this campaign. But at the same time, just the fact he was so much higher level and the fact he was so much faster than everyone else is a mechanic of itself. Speed is like one of the best mechanics you can ever work with. It works in so many different nuanced ways. But the problem was he took damage right at the start. He took a lot of damage, and that's going to lower his speed. And so if he's not quite as fast, that kind of like cuts what you can do with him. like significantly down. So that ends up with like, what can he do? Okay, he can throw up big electric attacks. Okay, so like avoid those attacks and you're fine, or counter the attacks and you're fine. I do like how it played out with like almost everyone's Pokemon coming together and being able to actually work together to keep this boy down. That was really good. We could have probably seen more of Blake doing things, especially since he's the one that ended up catching them. Although I like he caught him. I think that pre him catching him, I was like, Blake is the best choice for this by far. Not even a question. Not even a question. He was the best choice to catch him. But I wasn't going to like fudge the numbers, obviously. I was going to let whoever catches them catch them. Because that's like what makes this interesting. Is the fact that it could go any way just based off of who has the RNG or who has a skill or who has the better plan. The worst one to catch him I thought would have been Marcus, or maybe it would have been Nyland. Nyland might have been the worst choice. I don't know if he should have had that power. Okay, Marcus is somehow the NPC is not the worst choice here. And even Crystal or this guy here could have caught him. That was in the playbook that they could have caught him. It's just they didn't come up in a diegetic way in the story, and I didn't roll for them to appear. So like they didn't happen to show up, and they didn't happen to catch him. If the fight had dragged on longer, I would start rolling for either one of these to show up, and like it would have a solid chance to find them. Or if they didn't encounter this Pokemon right away, again, that increases the odds of one of these two ending up getting here and fighting the Pokemon first. And like that changes the situation dramatically. Like, oh, the villain is fighting the Pokemon. Do we help the Pokemon? Do we help the villain? Like, what do we do here? Or having a mysterious character you don't even know about fighting it. Again, that introduces a dynamic that is interesting and can change the way this plays out in a lot of different ways. Again, it didn't end up happening, which is fine because it's like more so what people probably had in mind when hunting the Pokemon. But like, again, having those options there make what can happen more interesting. I really like how people's Pokemon play together. One big note I have that I didn't go into earlier, but Robert, I probably could have worked with a lot better. Like in retrospect, he was probably his player character what are they called? His player was struggling a bit more. He kind of picked the most complicated class. He definitely picked the most complicated class, and like he didn't really like utilize the class very well. And like again, that kind of comes down to me because if a player is like picks a class and it's too complicated and they're not getting it, I need to figure out a way to like either simplify the class for them or figure out a way for them to like figure out certain utilities in the class in order to use them properly. And he started to get it a little more towards the end, but like definitely there's room to grow there. Like if this is not just a one shot and we continue to go on, then him having the most complicated class could be like a fantastic thing. If we go from the player like not really understanding the class and not really utilizing it at all, I don't think he hardly even used any of his class abilities in the first campaign, or the first session rather. So if he goes on to like master the class and learn the specifics and nuances of it, that would be fantastic character growth for both the character and also for the player playing him. That would be, I'd imagine, a very good feeling to like master something with this like more intricate detail to it. So that is an interesting thing that can happen. But again, I feel like I should have helped more with that going on and nudge him in the right direction, give him some tips and give him some help in order to like utilize his class better. I don't know, again, like what happened with like Nyland's character, I think is fine. I think that's like what I kind of think that's like perfectly what he wanted to happen. Mostly, I think he got exactly out of this campaign of what he hoped he would get out of this campaign, and maybe a little bit more. So I think that's fine. I don't know what to do with him. I don't know what to do with him or his player at all. I have some like long-term concepts of what he can do. I have a tons of long-term concepts in play. Every single time I make a game where I make it from scratch, I have an absurd level of long-term concepts that like no way could come into play even in like dozens of sessions, because there's just so many details and so many long-term things and so much going on. And I need to stop doing that because that's my problem, because like I end up making arcs and like characters that have like such long-running concepts to them that's like, okay, we're probably not going to tackle this ever, especially if the game just doesn't go from part 1 to part 2. And that's the main problem. Just like get part 1 done, only do that, and then start making part 2 and like set up some things for later on. But like don't set up, like I have things that would be so many sessions from now. I have like all the gym leaders made. I have like all the towns gotten down. I have so many things. I have so many things done. Like it's not even funny. I have like the entire plot line of like the evil team done. I have like campaign ideas and campaign outlines and concepts that are just like so far away, my dude. They're so far away. I need to not do that. I need to understand that's a bad idea. But, you know, hindsight 50-50. And I feel like I'm getting better. When I say that, the last campaign I worked on, though, I did come up with pretty much the absolute most, like, largest plot significant detail of any campaign I've ever worked on that had so much. I'll get to that in the next campaign. The next thing that'll be uploaded to this channel will be the new campaign that we played through, and eventually I'll do a postmortem of that. I'll get more into detail about like how insane I went with like plotting out that world and plotting out the story, and I didn't use any of it, right? I wrote so much story for that, and I didn't use a single piece of it, and we'll get there when we get there, but that's just like kind of a nuance of like how this kind of went down a little bit. So starting page, let's go. Overall, positive, right? I'm positive on this campaign. I've run campaigns that have been more in the negative. I've run campaigns that have been more neutral. This is overall positive. And I think even from the perspective of players that weren't as into Pokemon, I think they enjoyed it. I think there's different levels. And I think even over time, those levels have changed, right? I feel like I've talked to some of the players and some of them have said, some of them seem like they've like looked back on the campaign more fondly than necessarily right after it ended. And I think that's a sign that like I did something right here, right? I feel like probably there was like something that had me good there, that even if like they came away from the campaign feeling more neutral, the fact they kind of warmed up to it more over time is like, I feel means that something was going right here. Again, I have to work on the system a lot more. I really love this. I can't get through it. Like, I really want this to be good. And I want to do a ton more campaigns in the Pokemonverse and like work out the system and work out the Saging League, which I basically have done. Like, if I'm being honest, like this entire league is almost done entirely. It's just more so about getting the assets and like actually establishing a pattern for what these characters can do in order to go from like the beginning to the end, and just kind of smoothing out the transition, smoothing out the plot delivery, and like getting things in order and like interacting with the players and see how they diverge it from what I have planned and how they can go off on a tangent and like then be able to get back into what is already pre-done. And again, they don't have to do everything, right? Again, it's more so about having the options available and having the ability to push on those options further, but it's not about them actually having to do it. It's just giving them the option to do that if they want to. I want to do more of this. I will do more of this. I kind of want to do more of this with more diverse groups of people. I have started working on alternative characters. Like, before I had started this campaign, I started working on other classes besides the main classes, which are essentially like evil classes or like crook, thug classes. And those classes I think are interesting, and so I kind of like to do a like evil team or an evil campaign or like a neutral campaign or something. With different characters and maybe different PCs and maybe different people and different things going on, and it'll be cool. And I like this, and I think it has a lot of potential. So very much would like to do more. Very much would like to see where this goes. I would even like to continue this storyline specifically, and maybe add other storylines that kind of build in and flow off of this one. I don't necessarily have to guarantee this is like the main group. I think it probably will be, but I'm not going to guarantee that, right? If the players want to like say re-roll their characters and have different characters and be in the same like region as these lads, just like have kind of almost like two casts going, and like again, like there's options there. Like I could control these characters and say, okay, they go on these adventures and do these things and grow in these ways, or they could like play different people, or again if they have evil PCs, or not necessarily evil, but more like neutral, more gray, more like villainous, I rob things, or I'm kind of crooked, or I take bribes, those type of characters. If they play those at the same time and are in this region, then having those like interactions could be really interesting and dynamic and cool. It could be cool. It could be good. I like it. I like this. Very good. Very much. Very nice. I don't feel like I've put a lot of criticism in. I didn't want to be too harsh at the start here. Definitely a lot more criticism I could have levied, because there's, again, like almost every single like bigger interaction, every single like time spent in the Pokemon Center, time spent like doing a battle over here, time spent doing the things with the lumberjack up here. Like each of these, I do have comments like Blake wanting to go somewhere and like me saying, oh, your Pokemon isn't actually able to drag you, and like that not translating very clearly, or like the lumberjack going inside, no one's stopping him. I don't even know what to do with that dog. I don't even know. Like he's just like, I don't think I want to talk to you kids. And they're like, okay, boss, see ya. What? Why? What? Huh? I'm not even sure what to do with that one, right? So like almost everyone, there are critiques to take away, and like you can spot them if you pay attention. But like for now, solid enough start. I'm going to put this into a realm of like fluent continuity, where like things are kind of canon until said not canon, because like I don't necessarily think everything here has to be solidly canon. That's why I call this a session 0 and not like session 1, because of the fact it's like people need to get used to their characters, people need to flesh out their characters more, people need to like have the opportunity to play around a little bit more before things start being like locked in harder, right? I initially thought Marcus was going to join the party. I don't think he's going to join the party anymore. I previously had already liked the idea of having other trainers traveling around the region that can be bumped into from time to time, depending on different roles and different aspects and where they go win. So like he'll probably be one of those, right? So like I like that. I like this little Oshawott. Look at him. Look at his little eyes. Look at this dude. Look at this dude. Look at this dude. Look at his face. Look at this man's face. Look at his face. Like what? Like what's with this man? Like why is he like this? My guy. Like he's so big. He's such a big boy, Oshawott. He's so girthy. He's such a girthy big boy. He's so big. He's such a big boy. He's such a big Oshawott boy. Look at him. He's gonna eat these little people. Look at him. He's so cute. He's so big. He's got little eyes. He stares directly into your soul. That was the Pokemon Mythic Hunt breakdown. I can go in more detail in other things always, pretty much consistently all the time, but I'm not going to do that here. If you want to hear more about writing concepts, I do have a channel dedicated to talking about like high level, low level, all levels of writing concepts, breaking down into different details and different links and different styles. I also, on that channel, talk about like motivation and like self-improvement and other things along those lines, primarily self-improvement based topics and just like generally how to be a better artist. I have a variety channel. That's cool. It has variety entertainment content on it. I also have like a bunch of novels you can buy, and like I have some manga you can read. And if you follow me on social media, once in a while I give giveaways of like my stuff, so you can get some of the ones that cost money for free. Of course, you don't have to do that if you want. If you want to support me or you want to support the channel, the best way to do that is to buy a thing and like maybe tweet at me and say, hey, I like your campaign, so I bought your novel. And I'm like, sick. I'll do more campaign and I'll do more novel then. That's cool. Sick. Read my manga. I have some manga. Manga's good. You like manga? I write manga. That's good. You like shonen? That's good as well. That's cool. That's good. I have an anime and manga channel. Obviously, this channel is going to have like a decent amount of anime related content because I feel that's a good niche to fill essentially. But also I just, I like anime content. So like I'm going to make some systems and some one shots that are like, anime related. Like there's probably going to be a One Piece one. There's definitely going to be a JoJo one that's already confirmed and recorded. There's going to be like other things coming down the pipeline. It's going to be anime related. I also want to do one big thing besides this Pokemon system I'm making. I do want to make one other system that's going to be a very interesting, very, very interesting system. But that's going to take a very long time to do because there's a lot. There's kind of a lot going into that system. So hopefully I can go more into depth on some of those things later. We also on this channel have other content coming down the pipeline besides just tabletop games. We also have like Everyone's John, and we have something. We do have analysis content coming, and like I want to see how people react to that. And we have more content like this that can be made. We can also have versions of this that are more scripted and more clear and more concise. It depends on what people want. Tell me words, and share this with your friends because again, we don't have any people, and there's 2 people working on this channel. And if we could at some point get this channel to the point where like it was making any type of money, I could pay the other person, I could pay Owl some money and have him edit full time. And if he's editing full time, like we're good. Like this channel could just like function fully on its own. Like we could upload every single day if we had like someone who could edit part time or even full time. Because like again, like I can make games for days, my dude. I like if I can get more players, just like a rotating group of players, I can make games like instantly. Snap my fingers, like let's go. I made another game today. I made another game system, another game. Let's go. Because I get super into this. Right? I just like again, I spent 8 hours straight just making the Pokemon game system, and then I spent the next day making the campaign, and then I was like ready to rock and roll, lads. Let's go. So any of those things, any of those words, cool, great. More things coming. I'm a GM. I'm gonna learn things. I'm gonna grow from my experiences and be cool. I'm just being cool. I'm just being cool. I'm just being sick. I'm just being tight. I'm just being radical. This Oshawott will eat your soul.